Hey, I'm Dr. Patton, and we're going to talk about this class that you're in, which is an overview exploring communication disorders, or an overview, or yeah, introduction to communication disorders. It's all the same thing. So we'll start. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. These are some cities that you won't necessarily know about if you don't live in Arizona. I know some of you do, but not all of you. Most of you are from other states. So every every city that I talk about is just a city in Arizona. I was born in Mesa. Like three of you know where that is. I graduated from Hamilton High School, which is in Chandler. So there's another three of you that know that. And then I went to ASU, which you all should know that because you all go there for college. For my bachelor's, master's, and PhD, where I got that PhD in cognitive science. It's also sometimes called cognitive psychology. The reason we call it cognitive science is to kind of distance ourselves from what people usually think of when they think of psychology, which is like talking through issues. Not at all what cognitive scientists do. Cognitive scientists, like me, I specialized in auditory and visual perception. So, what do you see and how do you perceive it? What do you hear and how do you perceive it? And how does it help you move around the world? Other things in cognitive science are like decision making, working memory. There are a lot of things. Motor control. So, like movement science, stuff like that. Those are all within the realm of cognitive science. And there could be some other. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what else is in there. Because what's relevant to you is that I got my PhD in auditory and visual perception. Well, I specialized in that. And that's how I ended up in the speech and hearing department at ASU, because that's really what they do. I did a lot of auditory stuff. They do a lot of auditory stuff. It was a great place for me to continue my research and teach classes that I knew a lot about. I am also a runner. And here is a picture of me with some other runners. It was a mud run, which is why we're dirty. We're just not, it's not like we're just dirty and then went for a run. Originally started out my, wow, that was not where I wanted to go. I originally started out my career as an actor. That's what I wanted to do. And then kind of realized that was probably not a good way to make money unless you're, one of the top, 20 people that are in movies. So then I went over to journalism. I worked at a radio station and did mostly music and production, like the production side of things, which is a lot of audio engineering. So that was pretty cool. This was like a director's group that we had. We all decided to wear vampire teeth. You really can't tell that it's vampire teeth. And then also, I'm just now realizing that there's something hilarious going on in the back of this photo. This woman realized that we were taking a picture and did not want to be in it. So that's pretty funny. Okay. Then after this, I had all this audio engineering knowledge, and I didn't again think that it was like a super safe career bet because there was a lot of people that were going for radio journalism, and this was also around the time when like newspapers were failing everywhere because nobody read a newspaper anymore. So it was a little bit after that. But newspapers tried to hang on for a really long time. I still get a newspaper in the mail. I don't pay for it. I'm not an idiot. But they send me a free newspaper from my city. I do read it, though. Anyway, what was I talking about? So I had all this audio engineering knowledge, and I decided to go to psychology to do the sit on the couch thing and talk about problems. And while I was doing that, I worked in a lab where they did a lot of auditory perception. I was able to use all my audio engineering knowledge and totally fell in love with the field. And that's how I ended up where I am now, doing research in auditory cognition, speech perception, all sorts of stuff like that. Speaking of research, here's some of the research that I've been doing lately. One of the things is that I've been looking at phonemes, specifically vowel phonemes, 12 different North American vowel phonemes. We have 12 vowel phonemes, in most dialects of English, American English. And those are used at different rates when you look at swear words and non-swear words. Different phonemes for different contexts, which is interesting. You wouldn't think that that would be the case. There are certain phonemes that are used a lot more often in swear words. And are definitely well represented. And there's some phonemes that are used a lot less often in swear words, e and oo. And so what we figured out about this is e and oo tend to be, let me jump back for a second. E and are kind of opposed to one another on two different sides of like a vowel space. If you think about, like, we'll talk about it more in this class, but they're on opposite sides of one another. E tends to be seen as like a positive high energy sound. Tends to be seen as like a negative low energy sound. And then oo and are on opposite sides from one another. Tends to be seen as like more of a negative thing, and inharmonic. It's more of an inharmonic sound. Oo tends to be associated with positive things and is more harmonic. The way that we figure this out is we come up with words like gleep and glup that are total nonsense words, and we'll have people read gleep and ask them, like, hey, is this a positive word or a negative word? And then they just answer for this complete non-word. And so E is typically seen as a little bit more positive than This is true in other languages as well, like Pinyin, which is a Chinese language that uses Western characters instead of the calligraphy characters, but it is vocally the same as Mandarin, I think. But I know that it uses Western characters. It's a Chinese language that uses Western characters. It works for them as well. And I think that's the only place we've replicated this, but we're planning on looking at some other languages as well. One of the languages that we want to look at is Yoruba. Yoruba. I think it's how you pronounce that. I have a bad time pronouncing this, even though I do work with a Nigerian colleague, and like I listen to it a lot. I still can't say it correctly. In fact, we were doing a presentation, and that one of the words that we used as an example is agbon, and you can say that as like agbon or agbon. And there's other ways you can say it, and it's supposed to be like bed, or in one way it means bed, in one way it means like boat. And my Nigerian co-author starts just like cracking up, and I'm like, what's going on? And after the presentation, I'm like, what happened? And she's like, oh, you said penis. So, you know, I'm like, why did you choose a word that you could say incorrectly? And say that? And she's like, I didn't think about it. I'm like, yeah, well, like, neither did I. So, anyway, luckily she was the only person that spoke Yoruba. So it's just only made an ass of myself in front of her. Anyway. Why are we looking at this language? Because this language is a tonal language that can be represented on drums, specific drums called the dun-dun talking drum. It's a talking drum because if you play it like dun 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 dun, you can change the pitch of the drum, which is really cool from a musical standpoint. But then also, because Yoruba is a tonal language, you can play the drum in the same sequences of tone that the language uses and convey information as though it was a legitimate language with the drum. We looked at this to look at micro timing and micro frequency changes in the drum and speech, to just see like how close is the speech mimicking the drum. Is the drum mimicking the speech? And the answer is extremely, extremely close. Like even at this micro timing level, it's almost identical. So it's not just like a abstracted way that it's similar. It's similar in all the different intonation characteristics of speech. And then the last thing I'm looking at is tetrachromacy. Tetrachromacy is 4 color cones in the eye. So this is a vision thing. Most of us have 3, red, green, and blue. And that allows us to see all these fantastical colors. But some people have 4. And we know that genetically some people can have 4. There's genetic testing that you can have done to see if you have the signature for a 4th color cone. The problem with that is not everybody that has the genes for the 4th color cone actually sees in 4 colors. And so we need a behavioral test that can show if somebody sees in 4 colors. So if you know those colorblind tests, like look at the dots and what number do you see inside the circle kind of thing, that's a behavioral test for colorblindness. We're trying to develop one for tetrachromacy so that we can use that to see who, even though they have the genome for being a tetrachromacy, who actually is a functional tetrachromat. So that's another thing I'm working on. In this picture here, this is a profile of that work in Psychology Today. So that was pretty cool. Let's talk about the class now. There are 5 exams in this class, and your lowest one is dropped. There is an exam for each quarter of the class, and then there's a cumulative final. The lowest one is dropped, which is great. They're all online. I don't know why I said that. It's an online class. Of course they're all online. There's 6 quizzes. You're going to have 2 attempts for these quizzes. What I want you to do is treat the first one like it's an exam. Closed note, so I guess I should say the exams are not open note. You have to use something called Respondus, so you can't have notes out, you can't have anything out. They're going to do a room check on you, all this other stuff. Don't cheat. That's academically dishonest. We'll talk about that in a second. So your first attempt, treat it like an exam. Figure out where the gaps in your knowledge are so that you can study for the actual exam. But your second time through the quiz, get them all right. Pull out your notes and make sure that you get everything right on the quiz, because you want to get all the points. There's also 3 homeworks. 2 of those are written papers, but the first one is like really short. Just is going to ask you some questions about like, what's your plan? What do you want to go into? SLP, AUD, all sorts of things like that. I say all sorts of things. That's pretty much the only question. There's one other question on there. So you're writing 2 paragraphs. It's super easy. You're not going to have any trouble with it. The second one, you're actually pulling in some research about your, let me rephrase that. The communication disorder that is most interesting to you. It can be one that we've covered. It can be one we didn't cover. As long as it's a communication disorder and you're really interested in it, you should do that. Dive into the research on that and tell me about it. And then your final presentation is just kind of refining that paper that I just talked about into a PowerPoint presentation. We'll talk more about all those as they get closer. Okay. I wanted to mention really quickly about exams. Here's some kind of bummer news. There's in the last like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, there's a ton of cheating through Course Hero and Chegg and other sites like that. Essentially what they do is to allow you to download other people's notes, you upload notes. One of the things that people were uploading were the answers to the exams, which is not good. So one thing you should know is don't do that. Go ahead and upload your notes. They're your notes, whatever. Don't upload answers to exams because that's academic dishonesty. You can get an XE for doing that. And Chegg and Course Hero both give instructors, it's like you have a paid account. So you can see everything that users post. So, that's a way that you can end up with an XE. So don't do that. But like I said, go ahead and post your own notes. That's fine. They're yours. But don't post answers to exams, quizzes, homework, stuff like that. Okay. So what I had to do was take away the ability to see how you did on the exams, which is not cool. Like, the best way to know how you did and the best way to learn so you can do better on the other exams is to know what you got wrong. But I can't just have that visible for everybody because that's an easy way to just screenshot the wrong answers and put them up online. So that makes sense. If you want to see what you got wrong, send me an email. If a whole bunch of you send me an email, we'll set up a time to just go through the answers. So you can still learn from your mistakes. It's just not quite as easy. And then there still seemed like there was a lot less when I did that, but there was a little bit of cheating going on. So what the whole department, have decided to do is take away also the ability to go back to questions. So I know that this is not great. A lot of you like to answer the questions and then go back to the questions you don't know. But this also allows it for, if you find a way to do the exam at the same time as another person, you can wait till they get to the question, then you go back to that question and answer it. So that's not great. That's happened a few times. So now you just have to answer the question as you get to it. So again, I apologize for that. I know some of you enjoy going back, or that's how you take your tests, is you go back to the ones that you don't know. We can't do that. So you're just going to have to answer it and move on. Just study really well. I've got video reviews of the content. So we'll go through all the things that you're going to need to know for the exam. And if you study that and your quizzes, you should be set up really well for the exams. People tend to do really well in these exams. No reason why this class will be any different. So I'm sure that you'll do fine. Okay. Extra credit. It exists. There's going to be at least one research study that you can participate in for extra credit. There might be more, either mine or other researchers in the department. And if for some reason there isn't extra credit research that you can participate in, there's going to be at least one non-research possibility for you. Find a cool article on communication disorders or something like that and summarize it. So there will be at least one extra credit for sure. Let's talk about the DRC or SAILS for a second. The DRC stands for Disability Resource Center. SAILS stands for something that's kind of related to that. The DRC is what it used to be called. SAILS is what it's called now. Student Accessibility and Inclusivity. Lots of stuff. There we go. SAILS. I don't know what it means, but it's something sort of like Disability Resource Center. You can go there in person or digitally. If you live here, of course, you can go in person. If you don't live here, go digitally. If you think you could use some accommodations, I think there's a lot of obvious things that can qualify for accommodations. So if you get injured or something like that, contact the DRC, and they'll set up, if you can't use your fingers because you got into an accident with your garbage disposal, that's terrible. Don't do that. That freaks me out every time I have to grab inside my garbage disposal. I'm like, why do I do that? To grab grapes. But I mean, Anyway, just let it go. Anyway, if you do have an accident like that, you would contact the DRC. You'd let me know. I'll give you an extension. Let the DRC know. They'll figure out some sort of accommodation. But there's also, the reason why I bring this up is because there's also a lot of things that people might not know about themselves that also could qualify for accommodations. I had a student a few semesters ago who told me that he would get about 3/4 of the way through the exam and he would do really well, and then he ran out of time. And so I looked at the exams, and that's totally true. He got almost 100% until about 3/4 of the way through, and then it just wasn't finished. And so that made his grade fall to, like in the 70s. So he was wondering if there's a way that he could get more time. And I said, well, you need to go talk to the DRC, because this kind of seems like it's like a systematic thing. It wasn't just one time. Everybody else finishes in about 20 minutes. So it seems like there's something going on here. So he goes to the DRC. They give him some sort of test. And it turns out he's dyslexic. And he's been dyslexic for his whole life. But it just wasn't caught in grade school because he wasn't really bad. He was good at hiding it, and he was good at just seeming like maybe he was a slow reader, or really good at acting like he knew, what he had read. So it went undiagnosed. And also he thought that that's how everybody read. He thought it was slow for everybody, and you'd have to go back and check. And so he didn't know that there was anything different about him. Well, so once he figured this out, one of the things that he gets is extra time. So now I can give him extra time on his exams, which is great, and he does better that way. They also set him up with a font called Open Dyslexic. Here is an example of that font. They're these cool psychedelic 70s letters, which are a lot easier to read for people with some types of dyslexia. Not everybody has the same type, so it doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for some. Last semester, while I was telling the story, a person in that class said, hey, that sounds just like me, and the font that you're showing me is really easy to read. And we're like, well, look at that. This is why I tell that story, because now I've got two. And maybe more. So let me know if this triggers you to go look at, and it doesn't have to be dyslexia. It could be anything. There's a lot of things like dyslexia, test anxiety, auditory processing disorder, misophonia, etc. All these things you can talk to the DRC about, make an appointment with them, again, digitally or in person. And the other thing is, it never hurts to see. I don't know. They don't tell me. They don't tell any of your instructors. They don't tell your counselors. They don't tell your family or anybody that you've gone to see them. If you don't qualify, nobody knows. If you do qualify, yes, we know, because we have to give you the accommodations. But it definitely could be the difference between succeeding in your classes or failing. Your classes, this class, other classes, all of college. So the first student that I told you about is now in medical school. And, honestly, I don't know if he would have been if he didn't figure out that he had dyslexia. So a lot of freaking reading in medical school. So it's great that he learned that about himself, so he knows what to tell people and what to expect for himself, and about the Open Dyslexic font, so he can try to use that more often to make reading quicker and more easy for him. So if this sounds like you, go to the DRC, and again, it doesn't have to be dyslexia. There's a lot of things. Maybe in this class, you might recognize something else in you that we talk about. So communication disorders. Now, a lot of you are going to feel like, oh my gosh, I have an undiagnosed stutter. And you probably don't. This is called white coat syndrome. Everybody thinks they have what they learn, whatever disorder they learn about. Probably you don't. You're probably fine. But if you do notice that there's something going on that's affecting your ability to perform well in your classes, doesn't hurt to go talk to sales. Okay, last thing. This class is absolutely diversity positive. I'm on the CHS Jedi Council. There's me right there. Jedi in this case stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. I'm on there for both curriculum and hiring practices, so classes and hiring. Absolutely equitable treatment for everybody is what we're trying to go for. But the problem is there's not a ton of diverse topics in this class. So even though I absolutely support this, we're not going to talk about it a whole lot because it's just not really there. There's a couple times that we'll talk about it, but it just doesn't really come up. Feel free though to ask questions about, like if we're talking about a disorder, and there's something that you're curious about. This is for anything that relates to the disorders, not just in terms of like how it affects diverse populations, but for anything. Let me know. A lot of times, if I know, I'll let you know. If I don't know, the questions are good, and I might add them to the lecture because they provide a more complete picture of like the disorder that we're actually talking about. Okay, that is the end of this video, but I'm going to see you in another video and like 50 more throughout the semester. So get ready for a lot of this, different hair lengths. And at some point I realized I needed glasses. So those will change. You'll figure it out. Okay. All right. See you soon in another video, and good luck for these next 2 months. And then you're going to see this a lot too. I end my video and forget that I have to find the stop button in another tab.